What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be making a cardboard RC car. It's going to have all kinds of electronic parts on there, so let's check out what we need. So the first thing we have are 4 geared down DC motors. We're going to be using 2 Arduinos. And if you don't know what Arduinos are, I highly recommend looking into it. We also got a heavy duty servo motor, a motor controller, a couple of radio transceivers, a prototyping board, and of course a bunch of wire. So let's clean this up and start out with a frame. The vehicle will be made out of this piece of cardboard. I will first begin by drawing up an outline of the car. I would recommend saving a little bit of this cardboard for when we all become homeless. Be sure to leave space for all the components that we'll be adding to the frame. Next, I round off the side of the cutout. It should now look like a rocket ship. Once you have a piece that you're happy with, cut out 2 additional pieces that match the curvature that you just cut out. Ideally, these 2 parts should be identical, but if not, that's okay. After our pieces are cut out, we make a general layout of the frame. I put 2 geared motors in the back, the servo in the front, and then trace out where they're going to be. If you're a tryhard, you can actually measure out where you want the components to be. Here, I'm cutting out a slot for the servo. As you can see, I cut out way too much material. I probably should have measured, but I'm not a nerd. Moving on, we need to make an underframe. It's going to have a backbone with ribs coming throughout to make it much stronger. I'll first glue the motors in and then make the frame around it. As you can see, all those arts and crafts from kindergarten are really paying off. I fillet the edges mostly for looks. Be sure to leave enough space between the ribs to fit a 9-volt battery. Unlike the Economy, this new frame will be very strong. To finish off the bottom skeleton, I add a final piece to support the weight of the motors. Now I hot glue on the servo motor. The servo will be used to turn the vehicle. To be honest, I'm winging this whole project. Next, I glue the front 2 motors on one of the pieces that we cut out earlier. I then trace out the arm of the servo motor on the other cardboard piece and then cut it out. Go ahead and use a ton of glue to hold it in place. The idea to this project is to make it really look like a piece of garbage. Now we need to find a way to connect both the top and bottom of the turning mechanism. Here I cut out a piece of cardboard that matched the radius of our turning mechanism and glued it on. I also put on the front wheels so that I can see how far it can turn before hitting the frame. Lastly, I drive in a screw to keep the bottom half supported. Once I was done with the front end, I added the wheels. For no reason other than aesthetic, I decided to shorten the entire frame. This makes it look a lot more proportionate. Next, it's time to add the major components. I'll glue the Arduino on the top of this new piece of cardboard that I cut out. And depending on how bored I get, I'll add a windshield. This module makes hooking up the motors very simple. If you are wondering how these modules are set up, I'll provide links down below. I poke holes on the bottom part of the frame so that I can feed through the wires from the motors. I then use a little bit of hot glue to keep the module in place. After gluing the Arduino to the top piece, I can now wire up the RC module. I like this NRF module because the coding is really simple for it. While I'm at it, I also wire up the motor controller. Next, I steal my roommate's power strip. I do this because I need buttons. I promised I'll give it back when I'm done. After the buttons are glued on, I can now put on the top piece. Now we gotta give this beast some power. I went around and borrowed some 9-volt batteries from my neighbor's smoke detectors. After wiring them in series, you can see that they still output about 9 volts. I then methodically hot glue them to the frame. I don't recommend driving this RC car around military bases, neighborhoods, banks, or pretty much anywhere in public. You may get the cops called. Finally, I find a home for the transceiver module and button up the rest of the electronics. I can now plug the car into my computer and download the code. This code is required for the Arduino to communicate with all the other components. Behind the scenes, I made a remote. It uses 2 simple joysticks that give the Arduino certain values. These values are then sent over to the car. Lastly, I turn it on and work out some of the kinks. For example, the servo speed and initial position. The flicker of those LEDs need to be fixed. And I'm no expert, but I also think those wheels are supposed to be turning in the same direction. That's much better. I also programmed in a failsafe. If the radio signal disappears, the red light turns on and the motors automatically turn off. Once the signal is regained, then the light turns green and we're good to start driving again. Now it's time to test it out. I throw my GoPro on there and this thing makes a great spy vehicle. One major issue I was having is when I tried to turn right, the rear wheels would turn off. I believe this is because the batteries do not provide enough current for all 4 motors, the Arduino, and the servo motor. Other than that, it was a fun little quarantine build, and I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.